Evening all. I hope we're all okay. Thanks for coming along and taking time out your evening. I'm delighted with some of the feedback that we received regarding last week's presentation, which is why we've sort of put on another webinar in our series this evening, and we're looking forward to hosting another one next week. I'm delighted to be joined by Niall, who's currently with Brooke House College Football Academy, and he's going to be talking us through his journey when he completed the B licence a couple of years ago. So I'll hand you over to Niall. Niall.
Hi, good evening everyone. Tom, thanks for having me. Hope everyone's well. So yeah, my name is Niall O'Grady. I'm the current assistant academy manager at Brooke House College Football Academy. For those that don't really know much about Brooke House, we'll go into it further along. So adds a bit more context to what I'll be speaking about. But yeah, this is my presentation. I know it's slightly changed now from the B licence, but I hope this will be a bit of help to all of you, to be honest. So without further ado, we'll get started. Okay, so the first little bit about my journey in terms of how I got to get on the B licence and where I started. So sort of first experience I had of coaching was through some work experience with Leicester City in the community, which ended up being extended for a couple of years, which was great. My first sort of insights into coaching, then being able to go on to complete my FA level 1 in coaching. So then moving on to that, while I was still playing, I was part of a college football program through Derby County. And it was sort of my second year, they put you through your level 2 coaching qualification. So it's your sort of old coaching qualification. I was fortunate to unfortunate with a few injuries that had me sidelined. So while I was doing that, I was fortunate enough then to be able to go and deliver some coaching sessions within the program, which was my sort of first real exposure into coaching, and especially through the level 2 certificate in coaching with the football. It really sort of painted a picture and where I wanted to go. Moving on from that, from finishing the program, I was invited through the EFL, the University of South Wales, to then go on to, with the football club, to go on to a foundation degree program, which lasted for 2 years. While doing that, I gained work experience and being then offered the job to lead the football and education program through Derby County. And while doing some extra grassroots coaching, I then went on to be offered a full-time role through Brooke House College Football Academy. For those that don't know really about Brooke House College Football Academy, it's a international boarding school, which then has a football academy linked to it. We have players obviously from all over the world that will train every day of all abilities, from grassroots football for then players representing their youth national sides. So they then get split off into their own sort of ability age groups, and I've learned massive amounts while I was there, and it's sort of helped me through my role from the under 13 to 16 lead coach at the time to be able to get onto the B licence to where I am today. So there's some pictures throughout my journey through the UEFA B licence through the year. Varied pictures here in terms of players you can see that have gone on to gain trials at professional clubs that was within my age group, to some of the facilities and some of the clubs we got to go and play at, to then players representing their national teams. So one of the bottom pictures, the boy in the red t-shirt holding the ball, he gained his first international youth caps for Bulgaria that season, to players going on trial at various clubs. And then we're fortunate, we play in a couple of competitive national tournaments, and we were fortunate to go all the way to the finals of 2 that year, one at Man City, and then the other final was hosted at St George's Park. So loads of different exposure throughout the year, which is part of your journey and helps shape me massively as a coach. So then moving on, I think the first thing we really spoke about when we were doing the B licence was the values of myself as a coach, what underpinned what I put into my coaching, part of my coaching philosophy, so who I am. So I'd say that I've got a key passion for working within youth development and seeing players improve. That's what I really like to do. And then moving forward from that, it's perfect that I can work around the under 13 to under 16 age groups. And I'd say I'm quite creative as a coach. I like to try new things, if that's through coaching sessions, if that's through playing styles. massively. But the big four things that underpin my coaching philosophy is respect, in terms of I want to give respect to players. Like, you know, you expect it back, but you want to see them do that on the pitches. Hard work and dedication, I'd say that's probably one of the biggest characteristics about myself. And then I want the players to embed that in terms of how they train, how they play, the extra work they've got to do. You know, a lot of the players come over with dreams, as a lot of players do at a young age, to go and aspire to play a high level of football. If they're going to do that, they've got to do that through their gym plans. They've got to do that through their nutrition, through their extra analysis work, which they have to complete. So a lot of that I can hopefully push that onto the players for them to take that as well. And then bravery and risk taking. You know, I was speaking about, I like to be creative, and sometimes that is taking risks, if that's through just me in general, if that's through me in terms of what I deliver in sessions, if it's what, you know, you're asking for the players to do. And then lastly, the positivity as well. So I'd hope that players and anybody would see that through my sessions, in terms of my positivity, my enthusiasm, the reinforcement of that. And then even when you've got to go and be autocratic, then, well, be positive about it. So, you know, if you're going to go in and you're trying to demand something, hopefully it's something positive. It's someone in a 1v1 battle or something like that. You know, go, yeah, when you get in the space, go take him on. When you 1v1, go and have a go. There's nothing wrong with it. So hopefully they all sort of link together, and you can see that through myself as a coach, and you can see that through my sessions and through the way we play. So how I'm supported within the program, I'm fortunate enough at Brooke House, we've got coaches of vast and varied experiences from, they've had playing careers of representing their national teams at youth level themselves, or in senior level, to go and play in the top flight of English football for our technical director. And then players that have gone on to have careers in Europe as well as in England at varied levels of professional football, from League Two all the way to the Premier League. And then even just the coaches, we're not all English coaches. So we're from different parts of Europe as well. So different styles of play in terms of how they might do things in, for instance, Croatia or something like that. So we have loads of different discussions, and loads of people keep you on your toes through that. Also very fortunate that we have a lot of guest coaches that will come throughout the year. So we'll have usually 5 to 6 guest coaches. Some will be ex-players and gone on to coaching through in the professional game in England, but also in Europe. The one on the screen there, for instance, Gabriel Kofi, he had a career playing in Italy in the Italian first and second division. He then went on to coach in different parts of Europe, and also actually managed in League Two with Crawley Town most recently last season. Was also part of Gianfranco Zola's backroom staff at Birmingham City as well. So coaches like that coming to speak with you, coming to deliver sessions, spending time day to day with them, it's a real massive benefit. And then obviously go off your own back and observing and shadowing coaches from outside where you are at the minute. I try and do as much of that as I can do. If that's, you know, sometimes I'm lucky if I go in to take one of my players on trial at a certain club and then you go to watch their session anyway, that helps. And then lastly, the quality of our games program. So you're always being challenged by different teams in terms of the professional clubs there. You'll see some clubs that are English. You'll see some that are from different parts of Europe that will go and play. So different styles of playing as well, and different challenges they'll cause you, and you can learn a lot and pick a lot off that. So that's how really I'm supported, and I've been tried to develop through my journey as a coach and through my B license especially. So my role in the team, so as I spoke about at Brooke House, it's international, so players from all over the world. I worked mainly that year with the under-16s elite group. So it was made up of 2 very strong under-14s that we looked to try and push up with the top group. And then it was more or less a split of under-15s and under-16s. We had players from England, from other parts of mainland Europe, from Africa, from Southeast Asia. So it was a real mix of players. And then that possesses different challenges. And if we bring it back to the values of yourself again, you've got to take time for sure in terms of giving them different times to adapt. So understanding and respecting that they're not going to come over straight away and be able to adapt to the style of English football. Some of them might not be used to the speed of the game, the physicality of the game. And then also you'll see where I've put down expectation versus reality. So some players have come from an environment where they are very, very talented, but they've never had to work hard before because they've always been the best player. And then they come into this environment where they're still a top player, but they're no longer just the best player by a country mile. So they've got to realize that it's fantastic for their ability, but how are they going to go and push themselves and actually go on to progress further in football? So again, that hard work and that dedication and trying to instill them values, hopefully in them to have a positive impact in that and moving forward through that. So then I spoke about a big thing about obviously training to play. So who we play, we're very fortunate that season to play a wide variety of clubs from category 3 academies to category 1 academies, and they all possess different challenges for you as a coach and as a team. I think sometimes people get strung up on, we want to go play the Cat 1 academies, and yeah, it's fantastic when you go play them, but everybody can give you different challenges, and it doesn't mean just because you're going to go and play a Cat 3 academy today that they're going to go and, a lower league academy, they're going to go in, they're not going to really possess you with a challenge. They really do. So that helped us a lot and gives us different styles of play, going to play, for instance, a Swansea City or a Bournemouth to then go in and play in Port Vale or Oldham, different types of style of football that they play within their academies. So how do we adapt to that? And it makes you realize as a coach, and it's again a big learning experience for me, that not everybody's going to play the same, and you've got to embed the decision making within the players through that. It can't just all be coach led, because then if you set them up in a certain way when you go to play a team that you think are going to go play out from the back, well, then what happens when they're not going to go play out from the back and they are going to play a bit more direct? You want the players to understand that on the pitch and through different aspects of the game. You want to be as much as possible guiding them in the right direction, but you want to see them make the decisions. So that wide variety of the games program helps that, and you've got to put that through in your training sessions, which really tested and challenged me over the past few years. And then moving forward from that, then how do we go from the friendlies games program to competitive fixtures? How do we address that? That's a massive thing, because suddenly players go from no pressure really on them except their own personal pride and wanting to impress the professional clubs, to going and playing in a tournament style football across the season and wanting to go and get to the end goal. So we play in a national independent schools competition, which is quite a high level of football. So for instance, we played teams that had the likes of Jude Bellingham last year, and it's obviously first team out of Birmingham City, to then go in and playing in the English schools competitions as well, which has a lot of academy players that will go to those schools and will play against, and just testing players' mentalities and your mentality as a coach, that we still want to get the right learning objectives out of the games program through that. So we just don't want to completely switch our philosophy just to make sure we win the game. And moving forward, that should show through. This is probably my overall coaching philosophy going forward. So if we start with the planning and delivery, obviously in terms of the planning, everything's periodized in terms of topics, so how we work. And when I go to speak later about the project that I put together, we'll actually speak about that in terms of how I periodize that across the season. But then mainly it's the delivery. So speak about, we want players to have wider amounts of decision making. Well, how are we going to do that? So yes, there'll be some autocratic sort of style in there, usually around the setup. But I would say mainly me as a coach, it's about, my style's mostly Q&A. So I'll check for a lot of player understanding. I'll be getting the players to think, because better thinkers are going to be better decision makers. And then through my practices, adding some guided discovery in there, so we can hopefully, as much as possible, get the learning objectives out of the session without really me needing to step in and, say move here or move there. Because like I said, well, then when you go play a team that, are not going to set up in a certain way to what you thought, you don't want your players to freeze and think, what am I going to do now? You want them to make the decisions for themselves. And especially moving forward, not everybody's going to play how I want, how Brooke House College play with my age group. So if they're going to go play at a different side in terms of moving forwards out of Brooke House, they need to be adaptable and they need to be able to make decisions for themselves. And then moving forward in terms of, like we spoke about, player development, it is more important about playing and developing than it is about the winning, but still an emphasis on winning. You know, we never really go into a game and say we don't want to win this game today, but we never sacrifice our values and our morals and our philosophy to be able to meet that. We still need to get our aims out of from our training to our match day for that to move forward. And then again, types of session, a typical session, it will go a bit more into when we speak about the project, but we link the technical and the tactical sort of framework together in terms of how we deliver our sessions. So a session will start usually with some technical work, usually themed around our tactical topic. And all the tactical topic means is it's game related. So a big thing I learned on the B license is it hasn't got to be, right, we're doing playing out from the back today, let's set it up on half a pitch, keepers playing out from the back, these are the two fixed centre halves, the two fixed full backs, two midfielders, and number 10 playing against a 4-3-3 press with, you know, just splitting the pitch off into maybe 3 attackers and 3 centre mids. It's got to be more exciting than that, and there's got to be more versatility through that. So how can we get the objectives and get the learning points of the game out through the principles, and not always just set up in the same way of half a pitch playing against each other? Can we make it more variable sometimes and give the players different challenges through that, and then still focusing it around the corners? So, you know, usually when you do your projects and through your course, they'll be speaking about how are you embedding all the corners into your work. So you might, you know, it's got started to get to me think about periodizing with my physical load. So day before a match day, we're not going to do a really, really intense session, but where in the week are we going to do the really, really intense sessions? How are we going to get the psychological objectives of the scanning, the receiving, the decision making, and then also getting the social sides out at all times. We need, you know, really trying to put that all together. It's a big thing. And then I've got a video to show about how, hopefully still from the competitive to non-competitive match days, the players can be adaptable, but we've got to win in the right way. So a bit of context into that. The video might not be great because I know sometimes when we do webinars over Zoom, it looks perfect on my computer and it doesn't freeze up, but it might be a bit of a freeze frame, but hopefully you'll sort of understand what I'm trying to get out through this. So a bit of context in this: we've played AFC Bournemouth, obviously a friendly game, arguably scored one of the best goals of the season. And what this video is trying to show is other players are going off celebrating, thinking it's great, but you know, I think we're 1 or 2-0 up at this point, and the players we weren't playing to the best of our ability. We'd stop playing as it was, and you know, you have to remind the players that yeah, it's fantastic that we're winning a game of football, but just don't sit behind the ball now and think that, you know, you've got to do that. Don't sit behind the ball. You know, you've still got to look to try and play the way that got you into that game. So it's sort of reminding players of those demands, to be bravery, take risks, don't worry too much about the result. So I think that only got pulled up when actually my tutor came and sort of did a bit of a day with me, and we looked through some footage, and he went, wow, what a goal. And he said, we don't seem very happy about it, and it's because that's my values as a coach, in terms of it's got to be more about how we play, and we can be doing as much as possible to make a result look good, but we've got to play it. We've got to play our philosophy our right way and basically showcase them as footballers. And the same again, context then to a competitive fixture. So we just took the lead in one of the cup finals at Man City, and hopefully it should show through that. So I think that's basically trying to show that I think we maybe actually would have gone 3-1 up in this game. And again, I think the players were very, very nervous in this game. Going to it was a big day like that. It was being streamed online, and it probably got a lot of views. That game did live, and obviously the people in the crowd, and they were a bit nervous, but it's about, again, showcasing them in the right way and making sure they're developing, and they weren't playing to the best of their ability. So I think that bit there was me showing after we'd scored a goal. It's great again, but trying to work and maneuver players to play off different lines, I think I was trying to speak about in that clip. So that's the expectations that I put on the players, the demands. to make them better. And obviously that all depends on your environment as a coach. You know, if I was still working at the football and education program, it might be slightly different. The demands that I put on but for this group of players, they needed these demands, and always linking back to your values, basically. So then how are the players supported? So how do we support the players to get them better? So we have something called match meeting. I'd probably say it's the most similar thing to sort of PMA that they use within the professional game. So match meeting is software that all staff members, all players have a login. It'll record every training session, every game day. It will record their fitness test scores, for instance. So you'll see from the bottom left picture here, we've got one of the games just screenshotted against, I think that's Swansea there. And then players obviously they'll be put in their positions. All their stats will go in there in terms of their minutes, their assists, their goals. They'll then get an average rating out of 10, and they'll also get feedback. And that feedback will be linked to their sort of the match objectives in terms of what have been put before the game, and also the ILPs. So again, it's positive in terms of what they've done well, but it's like that cake layer effect in terms of, you know, in future, like what could have been even better. And that's like that ongoing report of feedback that we'll do. All their analysis is on there, so they get to watch that back at any point 24 hours a day. So when the games are recorded, they're uploaded onto that system, and then that's how we'll analyze through that. And then you'll be able to see the bottom picture. It's just an example of different fitness tests that we'll do. So we'll go through the speed gates and fitness tested at different times of the year. And then that will be progressed. They get tested 3 times a year. So like the 0 to 10 meter sprint, 0 to 30 meter, their mass runs, squats, etc., that they'll be put through, and how we support them, just not technically and tactically, but also physically. This will help them improve as well. And then player tech we have as well. So it's just GPS software that we use, and it's very, very vital. You can see good match trends, and it's just another visual image that you can show the players in terms of, for instance, this season I've got a right back and fantastic ability, and sometimes he doesn't probably show it by getting up and down the pitch as much, and you sort of go to the games where he's performed outstandingly well, and you're showing that heat map of him getting up and down the pitch, and it's different to other games. So, you know, trying to give them that visual, they can see it not just by me always talking about, you know, the demands that they need to meet, but also they can see it for themselves. They compare it, they set certain challenges and targets in terms of distances that they have to meet, but then also understanding in terms of the game day that some players don't actually need to move and make 12 to 13 kilometers in the game to have a good game. So it's understanding that as well, and not just actually supporting the players, but it helps support you. You know, it's extra learning for you as a coach in terms of those demands, that understanding where players are at. So it can help them a lot. And then again, analysis and classroom work. So usually day after a game, so they'll come in the afternoon after they've done their schoolwork, and then we'll do different types. We will do squad analysis, we'll do unit analysis, we'll do individual analysis sometimes with players, we'll do group work around it, we'll do workshops, we'll use the analysis in loads of different ways, basically, to move forwards and help and support them. And sometimes I think one big thing we had in that season was my captain of the group. He was an under 15 as an under 16, playing in that under 16 group. So he was playing a year up, you know, a fantastic player, but he was going for a really, really bad spell that he probably never came across in his life before. You know, he was always back in Malaysia. He was always the best player for his age group in the whole country. Even coming here as an under 14, he was one of the top players in an under 16 group, and still as an under 15 in an under 16s group performing very, very well. But he went into a bit of a bad form for one reason or another, just psychologically affected. So actually you can use the analysis work not just to always improve them as a player, but help them psychologically. I'm sure you've seen things on Twitter, on LinkedIn and Instagram before, different bits where first team managers will get clips of a player who's going through a bit of bad form, and, you know, showing their good bits to help them, you know, a bit of a confidence boost and a bit of realization, because sometimes when you're down in the dumps, all you can think about is what's going wrong and not what's gone well for you. So you can help support them in that way as well, psychologically, and we do that a lot. to make sure that they understand, yeah, we did do this well, and I can do this, and it's trying to get them out of that. And then again, ILPs, so they're individual learning plans. So every player will be set this across the season in terms of how they're looking to improve. So they'll have 6 weekly reviews. We'll sit down at the start of the season with them and sort of go, what's their what's their goal by the end of the season? What would they like to improve? What do we think they need to improve? And we'll sort of compromise across that into a plan. And then that'll be reviewed where their short-term goal and their medium-term goals, they'll be like building blocks, basically, trying to make that last goal. So you'll look at, for instance, here, one of my players, I think it was one of my wide players that this is just of here. And it's just different little bits that he needs to improve his game. And it's not loads and loads of detail in terms of we want you exactly to do this, but we've sat down with him and gone, these are the few technical little bits that we want you to improve. And then we put a plan together, which they've got to try and match and stick to, which is going to help them achieve that goals on top of everything. And again, player profiling. So I think it was more or less, we spoke about that a lot on the B license in terms of how we profile players. If that's, we might profile them at Brooke House, we profile them for various reasons, for recruitment reasons, but also understand where a player is. So a player might come into us and say he's a certain position where actually we don't think he is when looking at the profiles. And that helps you a lot, even setting your ILPs and having a clear focus in terms of what are we doing basically with the players. So what are we asking them to get better at? It's got to be related to the player profiles of what you want basically as a coach, and understanding where they are and understanding where they need to get to basically. So the profiling helps a lot to help support them and help push them forwards and have a clear path, a consistent path as well. You're not asking someone who's doing it just to do this randomly. There's thinking, there's reasoning behind it for how you've profiled. And then moving on to the project. So I spoke before about the periodization. So that's just an example of the periodization that we used as youth across the season. So we have we work in a mini cycle of 4 weeks. So we'll have in possession, out of possession, transition, and a team week. So the team week's basically where I would look to go over anything that we're struggling on. So it might have been on the out of possession week when we were working on defending wide areas. We really struggled on that. So actually on this team week, out of the 4 to 5 sessions we deliver, we might do 2 extra sessions on defending wide areas. It might be in general that, I don't know, our in possession week might have been playing into the final third, or breaking lines in the midfield third, and that might be our topic, but we've really actually struggled in playing out from the back, so we might go and do a session or 2 on that. So that's really how we periodized our work. And then as you can see, 12, I was fortunate that I'd already done my FA Youth Award, so I only had to do 12 sessions, but I know for most it's 18 sessions that I have to do. And then I tried to split it down into 3 different topics and 4 sessions that I would record and put as part of my project across the season. And then on top of that, obviously you have to do your reflections. I do sometimes audio reflections by speaking into something. I'll do visual reflections where we might get the Sabutio table out and we'd talk as coaches in terms of how this session's gone and how we'd have liked to make it better. And then also written reflections as well. So I try and vary that as much as possible to put that topic together. And then can we have some video evidence of that? So like I spoke about through my reflection, but also training and match days, have some, if you can, even it was just where sometimes when it was my visits, when my tutor would come down and he would just come on the pitch and go through little bits of me coaching with a phone. So it hasn't got to be all fancy where you get someone, up on scaffolding with a tripod and record your session. If you can do that, that's great. But sometimes it's as simple of getting someone just to record a 5-minute bit of different interventions that you go and do, or, your debrief at the end, or how you've started a session. It was really great for me to see different trigger words I might use maybe too much, or am I standing and speaking for too long sometimes and having to move it on. It can be really useful for you to go back over, and that can also help you with your reflections, which sometimes before maybe the B license I was guilty of. I didn't think about it too much. You know, that session's done, let's get on to the next. But really got to be more of a critical thinker and a deeper reflector, which is going to help you improve on the B license for sure. So then finally moving on to the last bit, how do we play? So everything for me, like speaking about it, so if we're speaking about decision makers, it's principles of play. So this is what we'd say at Brooke House. This is our principles of play, but also it's sort of what I believe in. So, you know, very simple. It's, you know, linked to more or less the same as the FA principles of play. It's what you use and it's what we try to embed into our sessions. So, you know, we look to make the pitch big. It's the same as, you know, create space, and then the movement, penetration to play through, and creativity. And then moving on to, you know, our philosophies around being compact and dictating the way the opposition play, understanding whether the players are in situations to press or delay. And then lastly, so then it's the win the ball. So it's their individual defending. So how we look to try and do that. And if we can, you know, one of the biggest things I'll go back when I talk about my reflection of the B licenses, putting those principles of play into every session where they're needed, which, you know, this session is going to be done in this area of the pitch. So this is the topic. So what principles of play have I got to add? And, you know, so you can maybe sometimes do, you might have 5 to 6 coaching points written down for this specific bit, but they all link to that one bit of the principle of play, and get players to understand that, right? So understand, is it the right time to go and play through the opposition, or do we play around to create space, draw them out, then we can play through? It's them off the principles of play, really understanding that. And then we can move into a more you know, loads of words on there, but that's sort of what I built off the Brooke House playing philosophy. But that's, you know, it's going into loads of detail. Did I ever really show the players that? No, I never really showed the players that, but that's sort of how I see our philosophy in terms of how I can think about how we can basically look on game days in terms of the playing philosophies, you know, so the build up, established play, finished play, moving on to defending, so how we look to deal with the opposition build up when the opposition have got established play in the middle third, how we look to defend in our own third, and then the transition, so how, you know, our attacking transition to our defending transitions. And basically to see the success of that across the season, we use video evidence. So what I was able to put together on top of that is me and the analysis staff were able to do some videos to put together some highlights to basically show, well, was the philosophy that we're getting the players to play, was it being shown across the season? You know, did the players actually show that? Because, you know, we can have loads of fancy words, but we've got to hopefully see from what I've done in terms of on the training pitch, you know, in terms of the sessions, the practices I've designed and put together, how they came out on a match day. Now, I know, again, it might not be the best clear footage, but hopefully you can sort of see that, you know, if we flick back one slide with our transitions, on our attacking transitions, we're looking to try and create goal scoring opportunities through playing quickly. So is it to secure the ball to play around, or can we play forwards? Can we go be direct? The same in defending, it's regaining our shape, surrounding the ball, then looking to try and win the ball back as quickly as possible off that. So hopefully you can see this off the transition. So transition from in to out. So more of our defensive transition. So obviously we're in the blue here. And it's the pressure around the ball, which hopefully you can see that's then allowed us to win the ball back. And then here we're in the green. So I know, again, it might not be the clearest detail, but this is at Southampton. We actually lose the ball twice, but it's then our shape to be able to make sure, again, we control the opposition, and then we look to get back into shape and win the ball back. So they're two examples. Hopefully you can see off that. And then this is more our attacking transition. So we're in the yellow here. So as soon as we secure the ball, can we go and play out to space? So it wasn't on to play forwards. So we've been able to switch the ball and get around. Again, here we're in the green, which isn't very clear, but from when we've won the ball, as we said, we're looking to try and play forward. So there was space there to be able to play forwards. which has helped us move on to score a goal. And again, just being nice and direct here. So again, like I said, I don't know how clear that was for you, but hopefully you can see from that through the footage we put together there. You know, we're looking to smother the ball as soon as we lose it out of possession, players getting back into their shape. And then when we've looking at our attacking transition, as soon as we win the ball, we're looking to play forwards. And if we can't play forward, we've got to secure the ball and play it into the space. So then hopefully we can open up the opposition. I'm not going to show the out of position example because I just don't think that you're going to be able to really get anything from it. You're not going to be able to see it from the lag from when I tested it earlier. But hopefully you'll be able to see from our in possession practice, you'll be able to get the idea of our philosophy and how we try to play, and hopefully that's put together. So if we go back to the playing philosophy again in the build up, again we're looking to try and play out from the back, try to be creative. So rotations that we might use, overload areas, you know, passing lines, want to try and create space, if that's forwards, if it's backwards, if it's lateral. And then an established play, want to try and combine if we can, play at a high tempo, again, rotate, switch the point of attack if needed, and to finish off, just go and be creative. And again, I think that playing philosophy, it all links back to your values, because you can't have your values saying one thing in terms of, you know, you want to be brave and you want to take risks, but then when it comes to actually showing it on the pitch, you don't do it. So hopefully this backs it up through what we're doing. So what you'll see here, just in case you can't really see, that's the fullback that's just gone inside to be able to get the ball. So I've been able to break through two lines there by just him moving into space. Same again, the ball's on the far side here, when the keeper plays out. And again, it's a rotation between sort of the centre mid and the fullback to get free and break some space up. And then as we're starting to establish the play, we look to switch the play out. Another one here, quite simple, just a midfield rotation. Bounces the ball out, and then we break free of their press to be able to go through. Another one here, I think it's just a centre mid and fullback that have rotated in sort of the pocket, and a little flick around the corner to get out. So then moving up into our build-up play. Again, just more rotations of players working through. So we're able to go play through. And again, just clever movement again to create space to be able to receive and play through an opposition here where the midfielder's moving. And again, here's more maybe penetration, so stepping into play, breaking lines. And again, quick combinations. And a forward movement off the ball. And then finally, the attacking clips. So this might be because the quality of footage isn't really good, but again, it's just basically one-touch combination play to break through the opposition, creating gaps to be able to have forward movement to go on to finish chances. Again, little rotation, so you see the wide player go in here and rotate with that fullback, drawing players out to be able to play in behind. But again, asking players to go be brave and go take a 1-1v1 here. again, creativity here. So this is something that players just worked on by themselves from a corner that they wanted to do. Let's have a little flick to finish. And then lastly here, a bit of a mix, a bit of sort of combination play and understanding when to go and play through. So there we've been able to break them down now. Then to go be direct 1v1. Look to try and have the finished product. Comes back out and finishes a nice finish. So hopefully, all in all, that was, you were able to see some of that, but the idea was just to, through the B license, just to support what I've been saying, you know, in terms of how we've tried to play, to actually show that for themselves, basically. So then thoughts throughout the year to, you know, to really reflect on. So obviously September when I started it, you know, really, really excited, and probably like some of you are now maybe, or some of you, you know, later on in it, but thinking about how the project should look and what I'd like to develop in. And then more forward, the detail around the practices, areas of the pitches that consistently we need to be using. And I think I touched on it earlier, coaching around all the corners. So then moving on to, I think November was my first visit, and I remember this visit very well. I remember the assistant academy manager at the time saying, you know, don't go in there and coach a really complicated session, you know, just go and be really precise with your detail, and, you know, don't overcomplicate it. And I went and did the opposite, because, you know, at the time I didn't think I was overcomplicating it, but I really was. So moving on to that session, I think I was looking at playing through the midfield third, and one minute I was coaching the number 4 and the number 8. The next minute I'm coaching the number 10. The next minute I'm coaching the wide player. So, you know, that's where I really learned, you know, I've got to be more precise with who I'm coaching, really zoom in on the session in terms of how I wanted to coach. And it helped me a lot after that. So, you know, started making it zoomed in and focused, working with the smaller groups of players for that session. So I might only really have coaching points for one unit of players, my primary unit or my secondary unit of players, but then I just manage the opposition. And through that periodization, I don't know, like I use the example of attacking wide areas. But if I'm using attacking wide areas and I'm only working with my right back, my right winger, and maybe a centre mid, I can still set challenges for the fullback who's up against them, or the centre halves, or different people. So, you know, you can still work with everybody and get the shared learning outcomes. And moving forward, then understanding the benefits of the player profiling through going through the ILPs, combining the units, little bits like that. But if we move on, the biggest thing for me is what I really got out of the process. And reflecting back on that now, massive part of my journey is through this. And, you know, the key learning points are, you know, I've spoke a lot about the values and the coaching philosophy, but really learning that underpins, for me personally, I thought that really underpinned how I got my learning objectives out, and it being consistent and clear, and how we got some success with seeing players develop through that happening, and making sure they're embedded into every single session. That's, you know, really big for me, that those values and that philosophy, and mainly the principles of play, that's massive. And then also making sure we've got our what if pictures. So, you know, you're talking about a practice, but it's not always going to run perfectly like that. Like the game isn't going to run perfectly like that. So designing different pictures and different starting points for making players understand, well, if that doesn't happen, you know, how are you going to think about it? How are you going to change it? And then finally, you'll see from the variety of style and practices, I spoke about that before. So making sure that through those practices, that they're not always fixed. You've got to vary, keeping the players interested while still getting the outcomes hopefully you want to get out of that, really. So overall, that was my project. Thank you for listening, and happy now to answer any questions.
That's great. Thank you very much, Niall. Got a couple of questions that have come into the chat.
Yeah.
First one comes from Josh, who's asking, how do you work with other coaches at Brooke House to challenge yourself and push your own personal development?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing for me, which I learned, is sometimes you have to go and ask for it, and you have to go and ask questions. Be vulnerable is a big thing. So don't be afraid. Sometimes maybe when I first started coaching, I was scared to go and ask this question, or I was scared, because I didn't want to get the answer. I didn't want to get honest feedback. So the biggest thing is, go and ask for that. Can you come and watch a session? What do you think? Or even sometimes you want to learn something about a topic, but you don't want them to think that you don't really know about the topic. So just don't be afraid to go and ask for that help. Really, that's how we link and then bounce and challenge each other. Football's a game of discussions. You're not always going to share, for me, the same. You're not going to have the same end result, but you need to see different opinions through it. So that's the main thing, really. Just go and talk to people and have those conversations.
That's great. On the subject of sort of talking to people,
Yeah.
and from your own experience and maybe other people Brett's asking about how you found the application process. Was there anything that particularly stood out to you in that process, as he find it quite personally challenging to get onto the course?
Yeah, I think it was tricky. I mean, it was the second time round that I actually got accepted onto the course. It's all to do with your requirements, and from what I know, in terms of what sort of format of the game are you coaching, but then also when you're putting together your portfolio, like I spoke about, going and maybe visiting other other setups, and you can probably put that on your process. So maybe go in asking if you can go and watch certain sessions at different places. Just trying to get out there as much as possible, learn different things, go and see what different people are doing, and hopefully from that someone will understand that you're keen and you want to develop. And I'm only speaking from my own personal point of view, because I don't really know an awful lot about the process and too much how they're selected, but just go out there and try and learn as much as possible. And worst comes to worst, you haven't got on your B license, but for me it's valuable going to watch as many different people coach as possible.
Brilliant, great advice, thank you. In terms of, this is from Alex, sorry, in terms of creativity, how do you approach any differences that the players may have in order to reach them? And I think being in an international environment where you've got players coming left, right and centre, it might be quite challenging to manage different levels of creativity, I suppose, for yourself.
Yeah, I think I spoke about the positivity. So I think creativity and positivity balance really well. So you've got to make sure that you're not going to criticize someone if I think you saw a lot on the build-up clips, examples where fullbacks going inside into areas they wouldn't usually maybe go inside to pick up the ball. Well, sometimes we lost the ball, and then the opposition did score. I went and scored. If you really went to go, if I was really critical then on the players for going to do that, they're probably not going to do that. So give them the freedom to go and explore, work on it. Ask them to understand the triggers, and they want to do it because it's a challenge for them actually overall. So usually by you being creative and asking new things, it's different for them. And they usually, if you work with young kids, they're young kids, and they'll go and do anything as long as they know they're not going to be criticized really for doing it, from my personal point of view.
That's great. I've just closed the chat just to limit the amount of questions we get, because I know we're getting on upwards of an hour now, and I'm conscious I don't want to take up much time of your evening again.
Yeah, no worries.
But Martin's asking about your player profiling, and in particular, maybe with your recruitment, are there any particular physical attributes you might be looking in a player?
Yeah, sorry, could you broke up a little bit there? Could you just ask that again?
No problem. So Martin's asking about your player profiling, and are there any physical attributes you might be looking for or expecting in individuals?
I wouldn't say there's one physical attribute that we really look for, but I think if we're looking at, we'll take players of any ability, but then when we're profiling to sort of go, well, what sort of group they might be in at the minute. Usually, if you're going to go play at a really high level, you've got one super strength in most areas, and physical attributes. It might be that, one player is very quick, or he's very strong, or it could be his height or something like that. So we don't really work on one, but So I think nowadays, if you're going to develop players, the quicker you can get them, the better, because they've got to be that to get into the higher levels of the game. And even if, for whatever level, it's not going to be a bad thing if you're trying to help make your players more agile and more quicker, really. So that would be the physical attributes we really look to try and develop their movement patterns, really.
That's great. Thank you, Niall. In terms of, you spoke quite a lot about the detail that goes into the way that you play and having an identity in your teams. Is there times in your journey when you've had to focus on how the opposition play, particularly whilst coaching at Brooke House?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's more about those principles. So, like I said, I had that big slide about the playing philosophy, but I'd never really speak to the players about it. I'd never really show them that big. That's for me to help put detail into my sessions. And if we're going back to the principles that we really look at, we're looking at, well, can we be compact? So, it doesn't matter if a team's really, really good at playing out. We might just be compact on different areas of the pitch, and players start to understand that, I'm not going to get, the striker's not constantly going to go and press the centre halves if they're just playing through straight away. They start to make decisions for themselves in that. So if you're relating them to the principles, they'll work off that, and that helps you be adaptable, basically.
Brilliant. We'll come on to the last two questions. Nearly there now, Niall.
Yeah, no worries.
You work a lot with the 13s and 16s, and typically stereotypical teenagers might have a lot of issues on the side, and quite a few better may have attitude issues. How did you deal with any issues when things may not be going to plan, and if a player needs an arm around the shoulder? How did you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, it's gone both ways in terms of I had players that need a arm around the shoulder, and then, like you said, it's a funny age. You have players that think they know it all, or sometimes they just want to get a rise. They want to let off a bit of anger or something like that. So it's understanding who needs what. Like I spoke about my captain over the past 2 years, that he went through like a month of really, really struggling, and probably wasn't enjoying his football. And it's, the arm around the shoulder, the positive reinforcement. Again, I can't really, from experience, preach it more about trying to be positive and trying to understand those players as much as possible and what they really need, and looking on the good things and making the best out of a bad situation, really, in everything you do with football and life. Really, that's what can help. That's what can help them.
Yeah, I suppose one of your key values you spoke about a lot was that positivity in whatever you do. So, especially if you're envisaging that positive role model for a lot of the children, they are children at the age of 13, 16, so aren't they? It'll sort of rub off on them, I suppose. Yeah. And the final question of the evening comes from Ray. In terms of your session design, how much did it change since the end of your level 2 to the beginning and maybe the end of your B license journey?
Yeah, massively. So I think I did the old format of the level 2. So I think back to it where it was sort of like your technique, your skill, and your small-sided game. And then I was fortunate when I was working at Derby, observing a lot of coaches, and through my degree at the University of South Wales, we sort of worked off the FAW UEFA B format. So we started to look at things like splitting the pitches in half, different channels of the pitch, zooming in certain areas, if it's going to be varied, multi-directional practices. So that's what I was trying to speak about, the varied practices, really, that you might cut a certain bit of the pitch off and just work with a right back and 2 centre halves and leave that left back area out for now, or you might even cut off the 2 wide areas of the pitch and just work down the centre. Mm-hmm. So that can really help, and it changed a lot in terms of my session design, because you're making it more, when you're doing your B license, from what you're making it more realistic and more realism around the game. So still doing that technique and that skill work, and making it, you're in opposed and your opposed work, but then relating it back to the game a little bit as well, and finding different ways to do that.
That's great. Thanks, Niall. Your presentation, your project came to me highly recommended, and I think we can all see the detail that you've gone into along your journey, and how you make the most of your contact time with your players. And I think some coaches might, on this chat this evening, may be quite envious of the situation you're in, and I think you set a great level of football to aspire to for a lot of coaches. So I hope everyone found a lot of value in this evening's session. I know I picked up some new bits I might take away and apply to my practice. Now, thank you very much once again.
No problem. No problem. Thanks for having me.
Next week, we'll be hosting another webinar with Alex Francis, who will be detailing his UEFA B journey from 2017-18. I hope to see a lot of you tag along to that, and I'll send out details for that in the future.